The static, brutal trench warfare of World War I was a crucible. It shattered the old notions of chivalry, forcing a stark and violent realization. A new kind of warfare required a new kind of soldier. From this grim necessity, the seeds of a unique fighting force were sown. While the term Special Forces had not yet been coined, the concept emerged in the shadows. German stormtroopers, masters of infiltration, became a feared presence, striking with speed and precision. On the Allied side, small, daring units conducted lightning raids, gathering intelligence, disrupting enemy lines, and sowing chaos. These were not grand battles. They were surgical strikes, executed by men hand-picked for their initiative and an unnerving resilience. As Europe plunged into the desperate urgency of World War II, the traditional military machine buckled. The speed of the blitzkrieg and the rise of resistance movements demanded a different kind of soldier, one who could operate autonomously deep behind enemy lines with minimal support. Britain, facing a formidable enemy, knew this more than anyone. Prime Minister Winston Churchill, a man of unconventional thought, famously called for a special force of the hunter class. He envisioned men who could spread a reign of terror among the enemy, fighting with cunning and audacity. He would get his wish. The unit that would fulfill it has since become legendary, recognizable by its iconic emblem and simple, powerful motto. The iconic SAS winged dagger, which has inspired numerous other Special Forces emblems, was created by the brother of founder David Sterling, Lieutenant Colonel Bill Sterling. It represents an upward-pointing dagger, often thought to be a stylized version of the mythical sword Excalibur, with wings as a tribute to the unit's original parachute-based origins. Unofficially, it is known among the troops as the Flaming Sword of the Spirit, representing a fierce, almost spiritual commitment to the mission. The SAS motto, "Who Dares Wins," is perhaps even more famous than its emblem. Widely attributed to David Sterling himself, it perfectly encapsulates the unit's ethos of boldness and initiative, emphasizing that success comes from the courage to take risks. It's a philosophy of proactive, aggressive action and a willingness to operate outside conventional military thinking. The motto is often playfully adapted by the soldiers themselves with versions like "He who dares wins" or "He who dares sits on his arse," which reflects the unit's gallows humor and the reality of prolonged periods of waiting. This call led to the formation of legendary units like the Commandos. Established in June 1940 after the fall of France, they were a small but highly mobile raiding and reconnaissance force. The first recruits were volunteers selected from existing regiments in Britain, and in 1942, the Royal Navy's Royal Marine Battalions were also reorganized as commandos. Recruits were trained at special centers in Scotland, learning skills like close-quarter combat, silent killing, and demolitions. While their first operations were small raids, they later grew in complexity and size, fighting as assault troops in many of the conflict's key battles. Yet the need for smaller, more precise operations remained. This need was perfectly exemplified in December 1942 by a raid on Bordeaux by men of the Royal Marines Boom Patrol Detachment, who would later be known as the Cockleshell Heroes. 10 men embarked in 5 folding canoes from a submarine, tasked with paddling up the heavily defended Gironde River. Only 2 teams made it to the port, where they attached limpet mines to German ships, damaging 6 of them. Of the 10 men, only 2 survived the mission. While the raid had little long-term strategic effect, it was a massive morale boost for the British public and the French resistance. Operating along similar lines was the Special Boat Section, formed in July 1940 by Commando officer and former big game hunter Captain Roger Courtney. His unit used folding canoes in a number of small-scale raids against railways, port facilities, and airfields in Scandinavia and the Mediterranean. The teams, made up of volunteers from all 3 services, also carried out crucial beach reconnaissance, a lesson learned from the failed raid on Dieppe. They worked with the combined operations pilotage parties to ensure beaches could handle landing craft and heavy vehicles during key landings like Operation Torch and the Salerno and Anzio landings. They also inserted secret agents into enemy-occupied territory and later served against the Japanese in Burma. By 1944, their methods were so ruthless they sparked a debate in the House of Commons, with one MP calling them a band of murderous, renegade cutthroats. To this, Churchill simply replied, "If you do not take your seat and keep quiet, I will send you out to join them." In early 1942, part of Courtney's unit was sent to the Middle East to work with the Special Air Service. When the latter was reorganized in March 1943, the remaining men were combined with No. 62 Commando to form a new Special Boat Squadron, SBS, under Major George Jellicoe. This unit took part in raids in the Aegean Sea, often using shallow draft fishing boats called caïques to blend in with local shipping. In June 1943, Jellicoe's men landed on Crete from a submarine, planting time bombs on 20 aircraft and a munitions dump before escaping. In September 1944, when the Germans began to retreat from southern Greece, Jellicoe's force, by then renamed the Special Boat Service, cut off large numbers of the enemy, who surrendered believing themselves surrounded. This misconception was due solely to the SBS's mobility. They became the first Allied soldiers to enter Athens as the Germans were still evacuating. Although their roles always overlapped to some extent, the various canoe and boat units became more specialized. The Royal Marines Boom Patrol Detachment focused on ship attack and harbor sabotage. The Special Boat Section and COPP undertook covert beach surveys, and the Special Boat Squadron engaged in raiding, sabotage, and reconnaissance. While these smaller units were perfecting their skills, an even more audacious group was operating in the vast, unforgiving expanses of the desert. Founded in July 1940 by desert explorer Major Ralph Bagnold, the Long Range Desert Group, LRDG, specialized in raids and reconnaissance far behind enemy lines. Masters of desert navigation, the LRDG relied on lightly armed jeeps and lorries to traverse the Sahara. Bagnold even invented a sun compass that revolutionized desert travel. He wanted men who were energetic, innovative, self-reliant, physically and mentally tough, and able to live and fight in seclusion. Many of his volunteers came from Commonwealth units, as Bagnold believed New Zealanders and Rhodesians had these characteristics. The LRDG's Road Watch reports on Axis troop movements were vital to Allied successes. One of their important raids was the attack on Bars airfield in Libya in September 1942, which destroyed 16 Italian planes. Following victory in North Africa in 1943, LRDG personnel were transferred to the Aegean, where they took part in a series of raids alongside SBS and commando units. The LRDG was augmented in July 1941 when Commando Officer Captain David Sterling established the Special Air Service, drawing its first men from No. 7 Commando. This small raiding force targeted enemy airfields and port installations in North Africa. As with several other wartime special forces, there was no formal recruitment and selection process. Sterling often directly chose people he thought would be suitable, including Lieutenant Paddy Mayne, a former rugby player who later commanded the unit. When Sterling's men attempted to parachute on their first mission near Tobruk in November 1941, bad weather and inexperience led to disaster. The LRDG picked up the survivors, and from then on, they were the SAS's lifeline, transporting them behind enemy lines. During their desert operations, the SAS destroyed more than 300 Axis aircraft. Paddy Mayne's personal tally of destroyed aircraft was even higher than that of any Royal Air Force fighter ace. From 1944 to 1945, SAS troops fought in Italy and in operations behind the lines in Northwest Europe, providing direction and arms to resistance groups, sabotaging lines of communication, and pinpointing targets for airstrikes. As the Germans retreated, the SAS also provided jeep-based reconnaissance for the advancing Allied armies. After the war, the British government disbanded the unit, believing such special forces were no longer needed. They were wrong. As new conflicts emerged in the 1950s, particularly in the Malayan jungles, the SAS's unique capabilities proved irreplaceable. But the lessons needed for this new kind of warfare had already been learned elsewhere. From February 1943, British and Indian soldiers of the Long-Range Penetration Force, nicknamed the Chindits, undertook 2 missions deep behind enemy lines in Burma. Led by Brigadier Ord Wingate, an officer who had earlier commanded an irregular army in Abyssinia, the Chindits sabotaged Japanese railways and roads and encouraged local resistance groups to attack the enemy. The Chindits suffered heavy casualties and many succumbed to illness, but their military value was immense. They boosted Allied morale and provided vital lessons on air supply and how to live and fight in the jungle. A veteran Chindit officer, Brigadier Mike Calvert, would go on to play a crucial role in establishing a specialist jungle fighting unit, part of 21st SAS, during the Malayan emergency. This experience was the foundation for the SAS's reformation. The unit was reformed under the command of John Woodhouse, who established the ruthless selection process that has become known as the world's most difficult. This process is not mere training. It's a crucible designed to uncover the deepest reserves of human will. The selection process begins with the aptitude phase, known simply as the Hills phase. It unfolds in the brutal landscape of the Brecon Beacons, where the weather alone is a weapon. Candidates endure grueling timed marches with heavy, ever-increasing backpacks, navigating on their own through thick fog and driving rain. The commanders offer no encouragement, watching in silence as men push themselves to the brink. The ultimate test is the infamous long drag, a 40-mile, approximately 64-kilometer march that must be completed in under 24 hours with a load of about 55 pounds, approximately 25 kilos. This is not a test of physical strength but of mental endurance, a trial so severe that the failure rate exceeds 90%. Survivors then face the jungle phase in the dense, humid jungles of Belize or Brunei. Here, the emphasis shifts to self-sufficiency, navigation, and small unit tactics. The jungle is a relentless enemy in itself. Candidates, working in 4-man patrols, learn to hide in hostile territory for days with minimal supplies. They are taught to cross streams up to 10 feet wide with heavy equipment. The constant presence of insects, the suffocating heat, and the ever-present threat of disease add a new layer of psychological pressure that tests them even more than the mountains. The most shocking and crucial phase is the escape and evasion, which culminates in the test of resistance to interrogation. This brutal 24-hour ordeal is designed to break a man's will and force him to give up information. Stripped of their identity, blindfolded and disoriented, candidates are subjected to relentless questioning and psychological games. This phase no longer tests physical strength, but the ability to keep secrets under extreme duress. This brutal training prepares soldiers for the grim reality of capture. Anyone who survives this ordeal earns the right to wear the sandy-colored beret. The uniform of the SAS has never been about flashy displays or rigid parade ground drills. It's about function and, most importantly, about discretion. In the North African desert, the first SAS teams didn't have a standard uniform. They wore whatever was practical, light, desert-colored clothing to blend in and protect against the relentless sun. The one truly iconic piece of gear to emerge from that time was their beret. Adopted in 1942, the sand khaki color was chosen to reflect their desert origins. For the men who earn it, this beret is a symbol of their immense perseverance. Today, there is no single SAS uniform. For counter-terrorism operations as seen during the Iranian Embassy Siege, they don a distinctive black kit, complete with helmets and specialized body armor, designed for maximum protection and intimidation in urban environments. On other missions, from deep jungle reconnaissance to covert operations in foreign cities, Their uniform might be a full camouflage combat kit or simply plain clothes, allowing them to disappear into the landscape or a crowd. For a unit that operates in the shadows, the most important uniform of all is the one that makes them invisible. After completing selection, SAS members become masters of modern warfare. The unit's role grew exponentially in the fight against terrorism. In 1980, the Iranian Embassy Siege in London showcased the SAS's incredible precision for the entire world to see. In a live television broadcast, the soldiers stormed the building in a blur of action and noise, successfully freeing all but 2 of the hostages and bringing an end to the standoff. This operation became a global blueprint for all Special Forces units in the war on terror. Since then, the SAS has consistently been on the front lines of warfare. They played a crucial role in the Falklands War, in hunting Scud missiles in the Gulf War, and in more recent conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq. The unit that was born in the desert and perfected in the jungle has become the silent, lethal heroes of modern warfare. Their missions are the most dangerous, their reputation legendary, but their essence remains the same as in David Sterling's time: unwavering determination, silent effectiveness, and the knowledge that the lessons of the past have forged the soldiers of the future.